Hi, welcome to Splash and Go. Nate Ryan here with Jeff Burton. An interesting situation, Jeff, at the end of Stage 2 at Kansas Speedway. Denny Hamlin wins the stage, but what's notable about it is he lets Jimmie Johnson back on the lead lap after passing him, after putting him a lap down, lets him back on the lead lap. Jimmie Johnson goes on to score a top 10, nearly gets a top 5, races very well through the remainder of the race. This is interesting to me because I don't think we see this happen as often as we did prior to when racing back to the caution was still allowed in your era. So what do you make of all of what transpired there?
We see it so little that when I was watching it, I'm thinking something just happened to the 11 car.
Yeah.
And then I realized what was going on, and I think it was a couple things. I think it was a sign of respect to Jimmie Johnson. And then Denny said after the race he was just trying, to be a good guy. He feels like that if he treats people right on the racetrack, that ultimately that'll pay dividends for him. I think it shows the confidence that Denny Hamlin had on that day. If I'm in Denny Hamlin's spot, I'm trying to put as many people lap down as I possibly can because you never know what's going to happen. You may have a problem. You may find yourself to be the first, the last car on the lead lap. So if you only have to race 12 instead of 18, that's a major difference. So it was an interesting strategy there. We used to do it a lot. Back in the day, we used to do it a lot, but we rarely see it anymore.
Yeah, and it's, as you mentioned, it's interesting for Hamlin because this has been a recurring theme for him all season long. He said at New Hampshire, people asked him, you had a chance to move Kevin Harvick on the last lap, why didn't you? And he said something similar to what he said at Kansas, which is essentially that I'm banking some goodwill here. I'm putting deposits, I think is the word he's using, is deposits of goodwill here, karma that's going to come back to me. Do we think that Chase Elliott and Martinsville 2 years ago is still fresh in Denny Hamlin's mind? Because it seems like that's where it all stems from.
Well, listen, I think that Denny's a completely different person than he was 4 or 5 years ago. I think that Denny understands that you don't need a bunch of enemies. Being successful becomes a little bit easier when you don't make everybody mad. And Denny's never been that guy, right? Denny's never been the guy. I know all you Chase Elliott fans are screaming at me right now, but that was out of character for Denny Hamlin, right? It just was. And the playoffs do that. The playoffs put drivers in a situation where what is the right thing to do, right? Joey Logano, he moved the 78. He moved Truex out of the way after Truex raced him really, really cleanly at Martinsville last year, and that move ultimately put him in the next round of the playoffs and ultimately won the championship. So it puts drivers in situations that puts their morals in question.
Right.
And so I think that his strategy of saying, hey, I just want people to work with me. I want to be viewed as a good person. I think all that it's a reasonable strategy.
It was also interesting, Jeff, from the perspective of the other driver involved here, Jimmie Johnson. You sat down with him last week, and he said then, he's been saying this a lot lately, that he's been on a crusade to earn more respect from his peers. That 7-time champion, hasn't run as well the last couple of years, obviously, in this winless drought, and wants to be raced like he still matters. And he recognizes that part of that is getting results. And it was interesting. I talked to him after the race, and Jimmie said that, honestly, if Denny thought he was a threat, he probably wouldn't have let him back on the lead lap. How do you think that works for a driver to get that favor and then make something of it, but then also feel like, maybe it's not, it's kind of like a backhanded compliment in a way?
Yeah, but Jimmie understands the situation that he's in. I think that's what's kind of cool about Jimmie. When I sat down with Jimmie last week, he's not in denial. Right, a lot of drivers get in denial, and we're fine,
right.
But he understands that they're in a building process. He expects to win this year, but they're building a program for next year. That's what they're doing. When they made the change with Cliff Daniels, that was all about the future. They weren't going to all of a sudden start running better. That was a move for the future, and so Jimmie gets that. He understands that. And I think the Daytona 500 in next year, that's when Jimmie Johnson's going to come out and say, you're going to give me respect. This is my year to get back to what I'm accustomed to. So I think big picture wise, Jimmie probably liked getting the lap back, but didn't like giving the lap back. But next year, I think he believes that no one's going to be giving him a lap back.
Yeah, well, we'll see how he does this weekend at Martinsville. Two guys who are very good at Martinsville, Jimmie Johnson, Denny Hamlin. Another guy very good at Martinsville, Richard Petty, who is the guest on the Dale Jr. Download today. Check that out on NBCSN at 5 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for watching Splash and Go.
Hey Motorsports fans, thanks for watching. Make sure you hit subscribe before you go for all the latest news and highlights across motorsports.